Okay.
Samsara Mala Nasanam.
Nashanam. Yes.
One may cleanse himself. Yeah, Nashanam. One may cleanse himself daily by taking a bath in water. But if one takes a bath even once in the sacred Ganges water of Bhagavad Gita, for him the dirt of material life is altogether vanquished. Hare
Vanquished.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So the verse goes like this: Mala nirmochanam pumsam jala snanam dine dine. Mala nirmochanam pumsam jala snanam dine dine. Sakrit Gitamrita snanam samsara mala nashanam. So one may cleanse himself daily by taking bath, but by reading the verses of Bhagavad Gita, all the dirt accumulated in his material life is cleansed. So the more you read, the verses of Gita, it's not that one time you read Bhagavad Gita and you're done for life. No. The more you read, even if you're reading the same verses again and again, over and over again, you will still be cleansed. The more you read, if you read 2 times, you'll be 2 times more cleansed. If you read 10 times, you'll be 10 times more cleansed. So this is a sacred, one of the most nice things about Bhagavad Gita, right? The more you read, the more you get cleansed. Now, how do you read Bhagavad Gita? Srila Prabhupada very nicely says, like a lawyer. A lawyer, if you know, whenever you see a picture of a very renowned lawyer, he has all these books arranged in the background, right? Those are his medals. He takes pride in that books. He shows them off like his badge, a badge of honor. So, but if you ask him again, I have this issue, this legal issue, he doesn't even have to refer to his books because he's read this book so much. He can call out which clause, which rule and which statement can be called out for such a issue, right? And he doesn't even have to refer the book. And Srila Prabhupada says we should read these books, these scriptures like that. We should be able to tell which verse, which text, which, what purport comes from which verse. We should be so well read. And even Srila Prabhupada, um, whenever he used to write these verses of Bhagavad Gita, uh, used to go back and read those verses himself, and only then he would understand what was written. He often used to say that the verses that he's writing is not coming from his own intelligence. Krishna is dictating these verses to him, the purports to him. So he used to go back and read this purpose himself so he can understand it better, right? So this is how Bhagavad Gita is cleansing us even now, every day. Jai. That's on Gita Mahatmya. Today we are on chapter 3, and the name of this chapter is what's the name of the chapter?
Karma Yoga.
Karma Yoga. Yes. So what happened in chapter 2? If someone remembers what was discussed, what did Krishna instruct Arjuna on in chapter 2?
Do your work without missing your results. That is the
Okay.
moral of chapter number 2.
Okay. What are the highlights of the chapter?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
He
Kalyani Mataji.
explained Sankhya Yoga, then
Yes.
Sakam Karma Yoga, Nishkam Karma Yoga, and Sita Prajna.
Sita Prajna. Yes, correct. So Krishna gives a brief summary of Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga is the science of matter and soul. Then he went to Karma Kanda. That is Sakama Karma Yoga. So you're working with attachment to the result. Then he went to Nishkama Karma Yoga, which is also called as Buddhi Yoga. Okay, and then finally he goes into gives a very brief glimpse into pure absolute bhakti yoga, and a person who follows this pure form of bhakti yoga is called sthita prajna. Okay, so he gives us a glimpse, but these topics are presented in such a rush in 70 verses in chapter 2. Now from this chapter onwards, Krishna is going to go one topic at a time. Okay, in chapter 2, because he had to summarize everything, he put everything in one chapter. But now onwards, he's going to go one chapter, one topic at a time. And the topic he's chosen for this particular subject or chapter is Karma Yoga. Okay, now Arjuna, in chapter 2, at the end of it, Krishna has told we are the soul, right? Soul lives on. And he also, as he went towards the end of the chapter, he said, better than working in karma kanda activity, it's better to work in karma yoga. And the intelligent soul, or a person who is placed in sthita pragna, they work very intelligently, knowing what exactly is required for nourishing the soul. Now, Arjuna is a very intelligent person. For him, he believes war is not something that it's a very abominable activity. He thinks so, right? And that's an intelligent way to think as well, because war has a lot of there's after effects of a war. So he's asking, why are you telling me to fight still? He's got this confusion. Why are you, the intelligent thing to do is not to fight. So why are you still asking me to fight then? So that is verse 1. Can someone please, raise your hand? I'll call out your name for reading verse 1. Or you can put yourself off mute. Nobody wants to read? Okay, I'll go for it.
Yeah, I'll read.
Shri Devi Mataji, go ahead.
Yeah. Arjuna Uvacha Jyayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Gore Mam Niyojayasi Keshava. Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work?
Thank you, Shri Devi Mataji. So Arjuna is asking, he's confused now. What are you telling me? Are you telling me to renounce work? Because you told me about Sthiti Pragna, that they'll listen to the soul. And then you're saying you should act, you should fight. So what do you want me to do? Do you want me to renounce, or do you want me to fight? Now, very often there's a confusion when it comes to Krishna consciousness. Many people think Krishna consciousness means doing nothing, just sit in one place, meditate, right? They think you have to cut off yourself from the worldly activities, sit in some faraway mountain and meditate on the Lord. This is a common misconception of Krishna consciousness. Who has such a misconception today? Who thinks Krishna consciousness is something like that you have to cut off from the world and sit in a mountain and meditate? No, nobody? Okay, you're in a better place than most then. Okay, but this is a conception. As soon as people say that this person has joined ISKCON, they start thinking, oh, then they are no longer going to be attached to your family. They're going to stop working. These are the things that come to their mind. So Krishna is going to answer these questions by first disrupting these conceptions that Arjuna has. Okay, who wants to read verse 2? Put yourself off mute. I'll call your name. Avaduta Prabhuji, please go ahead.
Srineva Vakyena Buddhim ho yasibame tad ekam bad nischayita yena sreyo ham apnuyam. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Vyamishreneva vakena buddhim moya siva me tad ekam va nishchitya yena shreyoham apnuyam. So you're telling me this and you're telling me that as well. You're telling me to fight. You're telling me to renounce. So tell me one single instruction. What is the most beneficial thing for me, right? Now, Krishna has already told him that he needs to fight, right? So why is Arjuna asking so many pointed questions? Do you think Arjuna is a dull-headed person, that he needs more instructions? What do you think is going on here?
He is little bit confused.
He's confused. That's true. He's confused. And he's asking these questions to Krishna now. Krishna has taken the position of a guru, right? And this is the best approach when you have a guru. When you may seem like a fool asking the same questions again and again in front of a spiritual guru, but it's better that you be a fool in front of your guru than be a fool in front of others. Others may be unkind to you, they might misdirect you, but a spiritual guru will always show you the right direction. So be a fool in front of your spiritual guru, right? So he's making sure his confusion is getting removed. There's also a second reason why Arjuna is asking these questions, because now he's playing the role of a student, right? He's purposely asking these pointed questions so that you and I, we are definitely not as intelligent as Arjuna. So we should not come up with these questions just because Arjuna did not ask these questions and nobody's there now to ask Krishna these questions. We should not live in doubt forever. So Arjuna is stepping into our shoes and asking these questions for us. So we don't have these questions later when we're reading these scriptures. Okay, so remember this when you're reading all these questions from Arjuna. Okay, so Krishna has started responding, will start responding to Arjuna now. Arjuna wants clarification and Krishna is responding. And he's going to first point out all the shortcoming in Arjuna's desire to renounce work, because Arjuna is definitely more desirous to quit the war than to fight. And he's looking for some ways to see if Krishna is even saying the same thing. So Krishna is first going to point out the shortcomings in Arjuna's desire to not fight. Okay, so in verse 3, Krishna is clarifying there's like two types of people. One type are the people who practice Jnana Yoga or Sankhya Yoga. And the other are people who practice Karma Yoga or Buddhi Yoga. Now, in Jnana Yoga, the yogi will renounce work completely. They'll renounce work and they'll sit and meditate in a place. Okay, and they'll meditate on the Lord. They have no desire to be involved in worldly activities. But a karma yogi will perform prescribed duties. And what does this prescribed duties mean? Where does these prescribed duties come from? They're coming from our scriptures, our Vedas. Okay, so there are two types of people: Jnana yogis and there are karma yogis. Karma yogis will perform their duties as prescribed in the scriptures. Can someone please read verse 4?
Shall I read, Mataji?
Can I read?
Okay. No problem.
Meera Bhushan Mataji, please go ahead.
Yes. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Loke.
Verse 4.
Oh, verse 4. Okay. Na karmanam anarambhan naishkarmyam purushosnute na cha sannyasanad eva siddhim samadhigacchati. Translation: not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. Hare Krishna.
Correct. So Krishna is already saying that premature renunciation of work is highly discouraged. So Krishna is very clear here. You cannot just abstain from work and attain perfection, right? So especially in Kali Yuga, work is a preferred mode of getting liberation than sitting in meditation. We'll talk about it later in the chapter as well. So just by abstaining from work, you cannot attain perfection. Everyone is doing something all the time, right? Even if a lazy person is sitting in one place, he might be crushing an ant somewhere, right? Something might be crawling and he could be crushing. So there, you're collecting karma even if you're doing nothing, right? Even Arjuna, if he decides that I'll not fight this war, right? Or I'll not perform my Kshatriya duties because that will cause so much hurt to everyone. If he decides to do that, he's still collecting reactions because then he'll allow the adharmis to rule. And all the misfortune that comes because the Kauravas are ruling will then fall on Arjuna. I'm going to mute everyone for a bit. Okay. So even not doing anything, but let's say you decide, okay, I am going to sit and meditate on the Lord. I'll not do any material activities. Let's say you have sat in a very still position. Your hands and legs are not moving anymore. But can you stop your mind from thinking? Because that's very difficult. So we are helplessly forced to act, right? So that's our nature now. We are constantly acting. If not physically acting, mentally we are acting. So somehow we are always forced to act. So being inactive is very unnatural. It's a very unnatural state for us. Okay. So the nature of the soul is to be active. Even when we're thinking we are inactive, we are still active. So we are creating some kind of karmic reactions constantly because of that. So Krishna is saying, not by merely abstaining from work can we achieve freedom from reactions. So reactions are always there. Okay. Meera Bhushan Mataji, you have raised your hand. Did you have a question?
Yes, Mataji.
Go ahead.
It says that a person who is situated in the platform of knowledge no longer has any duties to perform. What does
Yes.
it mean?
We'll talk in detail about it in chapter 6, Mataji, because that goes into depth into Dhyana Yoga.
Okay. Okay, Mataji.
Okay.
Thank you.
But that's a good question. That's a right question to ask. But a person who sits in Dhyana Yoga, we'll talk about it briefly towards the end of the class, but we'll go in depth in chapter 6. But hold on to that question. Ask me this question in chapter 6. Okay.
Okay, Mataji. Thank you.
Jai. Thank you. Okay, so now Krishna is saying better than renunciation of action is to do prescribed duty in a regulated manner. Can someone read verse 8, please?
Ma'am, me.
Yes, Lalita Mataji, go ahead.
Niyatam kuru karmatvam karma dhyayo hi akarmanaha sarira yatra pijate na prasidyeta karmanaha. Perform your prescribed duty. For doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work.
Yes. Thank you. So Krishna
Hare
is
Krishna
saying,
Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Is Krishna saying better than renunciation of action, better than sitting in meditation, because you can't control your mind. When your mind is filled with thoughts, there's no way you can control your mind and focus on the Lord. So better than renunciation is to do your prescribed duty, engage your senses such that your mind is filled with those duties. Do your prescribed duty, but in a regulated way. One cannot even maintain their body without work, right? So Arjuna actually wanted to go to a forest, lead a peaceful life, and not kill his family and friends. But Krishna is saying he's going to the forest. There's no way, there's no assurance that he's going to attain perfection by doing that. Krishna is giving direct answer to Arjuna that he must fight to get perfection. He must do his prescribed duty to sustain and maintain dharma. Okay, let's go to the next verse. Now, what kind of work is Krishna asking Arjuna to do? This is explained in verse 9. Can someone please read verse 9?
Yajnatat karmano nyatra loko yam karma bandhanaha tadartam karma kaunteya mukta samgassamachara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world.
Thank you,
Therefore,
Mataji.
O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So what kind of work should be done? Krishna is instructing Arjuna on that. Work must be done as a sacrifice to Vishnu. How can we do work as a sacrifice to Vishnu?
Without
By
focusing
offering
on
all the results to Vishnu Mataji.
Yes, yes. But is that, let's go a little in depth about that. So what this verse is telling, Radhe, you must do all work as a sacrifice to Vishnu. When we don't work for Vishnu, we fall under material bondage. So he's saying work as a sacrifice for Vishnu, that will not create bondage. But if you work for yourself, for your material sense gratification, that will collect sins and result in material bondage. Arjuna has said that he is fearful of the sinful reactions that would accumulate because of fighting this war. Now, Krishna is saying if you will not get sinful reactions if you work under the instructions of Krishna. If you're working as per dharma, you'll not get sins. But if you don't fight, on the other hand, you'll definitely get sins. So very clearly saying you have to work, but it has to be done as a sacrifice to Vishnu. So such work is not binding. Now, how to understand this in a practical manner? In a practical way, what Krishna is telling Arjuna is, you do your work and do it for me, because that's what I have come to establish in this yuga, and you're doing this work for me. If you're fighting, if you're fighting, you need to fight for Krishna. If you want to exhibit your rage, anger, show it on people who are blaspheming Krishna, like Hanuman. If you remember, when he went to Lanka, he was not angry when all the Ravana Sena and Ravana himself were chastising him, making fun of him. He didn't get angry. But as soon as they criticized Lord Rama, he burnt Lanka. Right? He used his anger for the Lord, for the service of the Lord. Similarly, that is a very exalted devotee. But what can you and I do? One example is, of course, if you're cooking, you cook for the Lord and take his prasada. If you have little extra time, you do service for the Lord. You go to a temple, clean the temple, or you sit in the counter, sell some, do some services there, right? Or you attend classes like this. Even listening to the words of the Lord is service to the Lord, right? Because you're using your senses. Whatever the Lord has given you, your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, you're using it back in the service of the Lord, right? You're not using it for your own sense gratification. Or if you have, say, some luxury, by the grace of Lord, you have some money, you have some vehicle, use that in the service of the Lord, right? So any work you do it as a sacrifice, as an offering. So you do not, one thing that we need to remember, especially when you're working for the Lord, is work depends on the consciousness on which you do it. Work can be binding or it can be liberating. Did everyone understand that statement? Work can be binding, or it can be liberating depending on the consciousness in which you're doing that work. Right? So Krishna is saying, if you work like it's an offering to the Lord, then it's not binding. But if you work for yourself, then it is binding. So Krishna is telling Arjuna it's better for Arjuna to not give up work prematurely, rather work. Another example to understand this a little better is an example of a knife, right? Knife in the hand of a thief or a robber and a knife in the hand of a doctor. The knife itself is not bad, but the intention of the person holding the knife is what makes it good or bad, right? Knife in the hand of a robber can result in him being imprisoned, sentenced to death statements, right? Or imprisoned for life, something like that. There'll be negative effects. Whereas knife in the hand of the doctor will give him fame, recognition, lot of material success, correct? So similarly, karma, depending on what you're using your action for. Who are you serving? Are you serving your boss? Are you serving yourself? Or are you serving Krishna? Depending on that, the result of that action will change. Similarly, another example is a gun. Now, the weapon, the gun itself is not good or bad, right? Who is carrying the gun makes a difference. If a person from an army is carried a gun, and he uses it for the right reasons, he's given medals, he's given recognition. But in the hands of a terrorist, they come in the wanted list, right? They'll be sentenced to death statements as soon as they are caught. So action, so karma similarly, depending on who you're trying to serve. If you're serving Krishna, it's good. If you're trying to, there's no sins incurred. And eventually, as you keep doing this, there's a lot of purification that happens internally as you keep serving Krishna. And eventually, you'll come to an elevated state of spiritual life and eventually exit out of this material life as well, okay, to a higher planet. But if you're not serving Krishna, then the result is opposite. You not just incur sins, but you also get eternally tied to this material existence. Okay, are there any doubts on that? It's a very strong way to understand karma. The consciousness of the action is a very strong way to understand karma by itself. Okay, you're good? Right.
Yes, ma'am.
So Krishna is now saying, what we explained so far is pure karma yoga. Working for Krishna is nishkama karma yoga. But if you're not able to do nishkama karma yoga can be done when you accept Krishna as a supreme Lord. But there might be a lot of people who don't accept Krishna as a supreme Lord, right? They might believe that some demigod is a higher superior authority than Krishna himself. So Krishna is saying, in that case, if you can't accept Krishna as a supreme Lord, then do karma kanda activities. Now, what is karma kanda activities? In our Vedas, there are 4 Vedas, right? And Vedas deal with a lot of topics, right? From karma kanda activities to moksha, it covers a lot of topics, right? And there's some section which deals of Veda, which deals specifically to karma kanda activities, which says pray to this demigod, you'll get this benefit. Pray to Ganesha, you'll get this benefit. Or pray to this Devi, you'll get this success. Or you'll get married soon, right? Or you'll reach heavenly planets. So there are a lot of, do this and you'll get this result. So people take up these prayers because they want to get some material benefit out of them, right? So these are karma kanda activities. Praying to demigods to get some results in return is karma kanda activities, right? So Krishna is saying, if you're not able to accept Krishna as the supreme, then pray to these demigods, because demigods ultimately are who? They are delegates of the Lord. They are assistants to the supreme Lord, right? We have gods like Indra, Varuna, Vayu. They provide us water, air, rain on a timely manner, right? But they're doing it because they want to please Krishna, because they are afraid of Krishna. They are maintaining the universe for Krishna. So even if you're praying to these demigods who are assistants to Krishna, ideally, let's think of a situation. Ideally, if the boss is pleased, he'll tell his subordinates, okay, take care of this person for me, right? And all the subordinates will take care of you for the boss. But if we try to please all the subordinates one by one, will the boss be pleased directly? You will have to take a lot of effort, right? Similarly, if Krishna is pleased, then all the demigods will definitely be pleased. That's an automatic response, downward response. But if you're trying to please the demigods rather than pleasing Krishna directly, so even if in that case, Krishna is saying, even if you're doing yagnas to please his demigods, still the ultimate enjoyer of this yagna is Krishna himself, because the ultimate boss of these demigods is Krishna. Okay, so even if you're doing yagnas or karma kanda activities to please demigods, Krishna is the ultimate enjoyer. Is that clear? Okay, let's go to verse 14. Send someone please read verse 14.
Hare Krishna, ma.
Hare Krishna, who has not read so far?
Annad bhavanti bhutani parjanyadanna samudbhavaha yagnat bhavati parjanyo yagnah karma samudbhavaha. All living bodies subsist on food grains which are produced from the rains. Rains are produced by the performance of yagna, sacrifice, and yagna is born of prescribed duties.
Thank you, Mataji. So verse 14 is further explaining worship of demigods. Okay. Yagna, and there's Yagna and Yagna Purusha. Okay. When you're doing Yagna, the ultimate acceptor, whatever you offer into the Yagna, you offer ghee, you offer food grains, fruits, the ultimate person who receives this Yagna offering is the Lord himself. Okay. So here he is saying all living beings, they subsist on food grains. We need food. All of us need food, correct? When does food grow? When there's enough rain, right? And how does rain happen? Because we are performing yagnas. We are pleasing the gods. We are pleasing Varuna. We are pleasing Indra. And ultimately the Lord is pleased. And because of that, we get timely rain, right? So because of yagna, we get rain. And where are yagnas coming from? Yagnas are done as prescribed in the Vedas. And where is the Vedas coming from? Who's the author of Veda? Veda Vyasa, who's the incarnation of Krishna himself. So ultimately, whatever happens, whether it's rain, sun, wind, all of that is coming from the Supreme Lord. So as human beings, we should always follow this Vedic cycle of sacrifices. We should do offerings to the Lord. Even if you don't believe in the Supreme Lord, do it to the lower forms of God, like the demigods, right? So even when doing karma kanda activities, Krishna is saying, we, even by doing it, even if you don't believe in Krishna right now, as you keep doing it, eventually as the purification goes on, you will come to a higher stage of bhakti, which is karma yoga activities, where you involve yourself in karma yoga eventually. So you'll eventually move from karma kanda to karma yoga. So this is from moving from demigod worship to worshipping the Lord directly from there on. Okay, so this is verse 14. Can someone read verse 21 for me?
Shall I read, Mataji?
Maya Devi Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yad acharati shreshtas tat eva taro janah sayat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Hare
Now
Krishna.
Krishna is telling why Arjuna should definitely act. He's giving examples of great men. Whatever action great men perform, common man follow. Great man. Now who are these great men? He's talking about self-realized people, right? Now a self-realized person does not really have to work. Their senses and mind are already in control, and they're able to focus their 100% of their sense, mind and intelligence on the Lord. But even then, these self-realized people, they still work. They still work because they want to set an example to the world. One example of this is Lord Ram himself. Lord Ram, one day he was getting ready to get coronated, right? His Pattabhisheka would have happened the next day. But the same day he gets to know, no, I have to give up all this kingdom and go to the forest for the next 13 years, 14 years. Was he angry, upset at that point when he got to know that he has to give up everything now?
He was not.
He was not
he was
upset.
not. No, Mataji.
This is a perfect example of controlling your senses, your mind. He simply followed the order of his father and mother because they are superior, right? This is setting an example of how to live by achara and vichara, setting an example. So he's one of those great men that we even today follow. Similar, there are a lot of leaders in our times as well. Like Gandhiji, he promoted khadi, and because he's a great leader, many people started wearing khadi, right? And some leaders like Abraham Lincoln, he is because he's very famous for his ideologies in US politics. He abolished slavery, right? And he's called as Honest Abe in his circle back then, because that reflected his reputation for fairness and truthfulness. He's called Honest Abe, and because of it, there are still a lot of people who give him as cite him as an example. There are similar leaders like Nelson Mandela, right, who went to jail for freedom struggles. So people follow what the leaders do. Another example given in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 3 is Janaka Maharaj. Does anyone know who is Janaka Maharaj?
Father of
Yes, Mataji.
Sita Devi.
Father
Father
of
of Sita.
Sita Devi.
Sita.
father of Sita Devi, Janaka Maharaj. So he's the father of Sita. He's a very pious king. He's called as a Raja Rishi. Because Raja Rishi, why? Because not only he is aligned spiritually, but he's also doing his duties as a king. He waged wars because he had to establish dharma. First, he tried to talk, and when that didn't work, he finally fought wars to establish dharma. So he performed his duties as a king, but he also did his prescribed duties as per given in the Vedas, as per scriptures. And because of which, he also got the reputation of a Mahajana. He's counted as one of the Mahajanas, right? So he's doing all this because he wants to set up an example of how people should act, how people should behave when dharma is not being established. Another, just like Lord Rama and Janaka, there's Krishna as well. Now, Krishna is the supreme Lord. Who can tell him what to do, what not to do? Still, he was following the scriptures. He used to get up early in the morning, do his pujas. He used to do his Sandhya Vandana. He used to take care of his kingdom. He used to take care of his 16,000 wives. Everyone had private time with him. He used to take care of his citizens, right? Listen to the problems of his citizens, take care, set up rules, regulations, policies. He used to do all that. So, but why is he doing all this? Because it's not because he's afraid of something. Nobody can punish Krishna for not doing anything, but he's still doing it because he needs to set an example. Similarly, you and I, many of times, a child, they will learn from their parents, right? If the father or mother gets a call from their boss and the mother or father is lying on the phone to say, I'm unwell today, I can't come, right? Coughing and all that, the child is observing, isn't it? And the next time you'll see that the child is also started to lie. Correct? So the child is learning from the parents. People are learning from their leaders. They're learning from somebody superior. So constantly this learning is going on. Okay. So just give me a second. So Krishna is here saying to engage in, he's telling Arjuna, you must fight, because otherwise there'll be many of your followers who say Arjuna didn't do his duty, so I'll also not do my duty. But to set the right example, he's telling Arjuna must fight. Okay. Also, at the closing of this chapter, Krishna is further giving another reason, another caution to Arjuna. He's saying, you must fight. Okay, you must perform your duties. And as you keep performing your duty as per prescribed scriptures, gradually that purification will happen and you will be elevated to higher stages of bhakti. Okay, but he's also warning Arjuna to say, while performing your duties, be very cautious of one thing, which is lust. Lust he calls as the greatest enemy. Now, lust is not just sexual lust, right? We all understand sexual lust. But what he's talking about here is any kind of over endeavor for something. For example, let's say you have a nice, good house, your family is living there happily. But now you want a second property. Okay, you buy a second house, you build a third, fourth, fifth story about your house. But that also means you need to take a big loan, which means to say for the next 20, 30 years, you need to work, right? So when you have to work so much, when you have to pay loans in crores, then ultimately your focus in life changes from Krishna to satisfying your own ego, correct? So this lust or greed for more to bring will only entangle us in material entanglement. So Krishna is warning Arjuna, while you're working, also don't over endeavor. Don't work with greed, with lust. So lust can never be satisfied, he says. Krishna says lust cannot be satisfied. It's like an itch. Sometimes you feel some part of your body is itching. Okay. And what you do, you scratch that itch, right? Does that subside the itch? No, the itch only increases. Similarly, lust cannot be satisfied by trying to satisfy or meet the requirements of your over endeavor. It cannot be satisfied. And he also says that his lust stays in three places. It stays in your senses, your mind, and your intelligence. There are three places where lust resides. Okay. How senses? So senses is when your tongue, your eyes, your ears, your nose, and your skin, right? When you over endeavor, when you focus so much on eating good food and you have no control on your tongue, so what does your mind do then? Then it constantly looking for places to go out and eat, right? And as you keep eating, then there's more things you want to experiment with, right? So when your senses are out of control, your mind goes out of control. And when your mind is out of control, your intelligence will try to justify what your mind is trying to do, right? So Krishna is saying, first way to control your actions or your lust is to control your senses. Regulate what you eat, what you see, what you read, and who you associate with. Even association can trigger you the wrong way. The wrong type of association can make you feel like I'm not doing enough, I need to do more, right? So when your senses are eventually in control, when you put more regulations into it, and regulations are given by spiritual masters, right? The spiritual master will tell you what kind of things you are allowed to eat or versus not allowed to eat. So when you control, when you practice regulated living, your senses eventually come in control. And when you do that, your mind becomes steady. It will not be distracted at every single thought, right? And when your mind is in control, eventually your intelligence will also listen, listen to you. It will dictate you in a positive direction. So when all these three things happen, when your senses are in control, when your mind is in control, when your intelligence is in control, that is when your soul finally gets awakened to spiritual awareness. Okay, otherwise, because your three things, your senses, mind, and intelligence, if they're uncontrolled, your soul also loses direction. Your soul will look for, even though the soul is a spiritual entity, that also can get deviated from the spiritual part, because your three controlling factors is uncontrolled. But if these three controlling factors are controlled, your lust, greed for external enjoyment is reduced, then only your soul gets awakened to spiritual awareness. Profound thoughts, isn't that? Any questions on that?
Clear, Mataji?
Yes, okay. Okay. So since, one question I see on chat, what language was Bhagavad Gita spoken? Is it Sanskrit? It's called Devanagari language. Okay, similar to Sanskrit, but the lipi itself is called Devanagari.
Devanagari is Hindi, no, ma'am?
Yes,
Hindi,
it's
no, Mataji.
Hindi. It can be written in Hindi. It can be written in Kannada. It can be written in whichever language you're. But yes, the script can be anything, right? It can be Sanskrit also. And
Hare
you
Krishna
understand that?
Mataji.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, I have one question.
Yes.
How I have to remove negative thoughts from our
Can you
mind?
be a little loud, Prabhuji? Your voice is breaking.
Okay.
Yes, try again.
Now, am I audible, Mataji?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Mataji, I'm asking
Mhm.
how I can remove negative thoughts from my mind. Because if I'm doing pray anytime, either I can say in the morning, in the
Mhm.
noon, or in the evening time,
Mhm.
still those time my mind is physically I was an arms sitting over there, but
Mm.
the mind is not much stable. Mind is
Mine is
still
not
working
stable.
on that.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
mind is still working and just thinking in another
Is
direction.
it in
But
spiritual context you're asking this question or just generally?
I can say it's a general question.
It's a gentle question. Okay.
Yes,
I'll respond to it
but
from a spiritual angle because for other factors, you have life coaches who can may help you. But from a spiritual angle, let's try
no,
to address it.
I wanted to know, Mataji, about
Yeah.
behalf of a spiritual angle,
Okay.
not for the coaches and all.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
my
Okay.
yes, Mataji.
Now,
Okay.
what is prescribed if you want to focus on anything spiritual? Like many people try to get up early in the morning, they try to do their rounds, they try to read something, they engage in some kind of spiritual activities. Most of that is done in the morning because we'll study about human nature, Prakriti, in the following chapters. Okay. There are three types of human nature: Sattva guna, Tamoguna, and Rajoguna. So when you're waking up in the morning, you're in Sattva Guna, where you want to do more control activities. Your mind is not too distracted. Okay. But as you proceed in the day, you start, all the distractions start catching on, right? You think you have distractions from people calling from work, or your family is calling you for something. And so this, and in this mode, you're in this drive to do, finish this, finish this, finish this, act on this, finish this. So you're in that kind of mood, right? And as you proceed further after work, when you come back, most people get into tamaguna, laziness. I just want to finish the day and sleep off. I don't want to do anything more. Correct?
Right.
So, what do you
Yes.
think is the best time of these three intervals to engage in something that needs a lot of focus?
Morning.
Yes, yes. So, something that needs a lot of focus should be done in the morning, right? If you want to reach office early, the best time to reach, start from home, is early in the morning. The later you start, there'll be more delays. Similarly, if you want to work on something that needs a lot of focus, and you don't want to be disturbed from anything that might eventually bother you through the day, the best time to do is in the morning. But still, if you don't have time in the morning, you can only do it later in the day. I suggest you set up a system for you where you'll say, okay, for this 30 minutes, I will not look at, see or do anything, right? Or if you want to sit and chant, to sit and read, keep something in front of you that helps you focus, like a picture maybe, right? Or keep your phone away, that will reduce your distraction. Tell your people that don't bother me for this time because I want to focus. Make your intent very clear, right? These external factors might help you, but what will also help you is if you want to focus on something, if you want to say sit and chant for half an hour, your quality of your chanting will depend on how you're spending the rest of the day. Okay, we spend 2 hours a day chanting, but that 2 hours of chanting, your quality of that chanting will depend on how you spend the rest of the 24 hours. Are you completely forgetting Krishna for the rest of the 22 hours and only focusing on Krishna for 2 hours, versus you have made Krishna part of your life for the other 22 hours as well? Because when in that case, the second latter scenario, you'll see that your intent of chanting, your intent of doing spiritual activities, you're much more focused. But few tips, maybe you could keep a picture of your deity in front of you. If you have a phone in front of you, your screensaver could be of your deity, or you have a picture of the deity in your room where you work, or where you chant. So constantly seeing and remembering the faces of the Lord will also be a constant reminder for you that you need to focus. You need to focus on what you're doing. Would that help?
Uh, Thank you, Mataji. Thank
Hare
you for
Krishna.
clarification.
Let's
Hare
finish the
Krishna.
rest of the slides and I'll take more questions after that. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Now,
Mataji.
since we spoke about Yagna and Yagna Purusha earlier, okay, now the Yuga Dharma, the Yagna process to be followed is different in every Yuga. This is a verse from the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd chapter, 52 verse. Krite yad dhyayato Vishnu, Tretayam yajato makaha, Dvapare paricharayayam, Kalav taddari kirtanat. So what is this verse saying? It's saying whatever results one could have achieved in Krita Yuga or Satya Yuga by the process of meditation on the Lord, and whatever result one could have achieved in Treta Yuga by performing yagna, sacrifices, and whatever result one could have achieved by serving the lotus feet or the deity form of the Lord in Dwapara Yuga, the same result can be achieved in Kali Yuga by chanting the holy name of the Lord. So this process of dhyana yoga, which was prescribed in for Krita or Satya Yuga, this is explained in much detail in chapter 6. Dhyana is meditate. Okay, people used to sit in one place, straight neck, straight focus on the tip of the nose, and they'll focus on the Lord completely for years together, right? And years is because Krita Yuga, the average age of lifespan of a people was 1 lakh years. They used to live for 1 lakh years. Okay, so they could practice meditation for very long time. They could perfect the process of meditation, dhyana yoga, and eventually they get liberated. But as we moved from Krita Yuga to Treta Yuga, the average lifespan of people in Treta Yuga came down from 1 lakh years to 10,000 years. So people would, on an average, live for 10,000 years. So obviously, they can't sit on meditation for so many years now because their life will be over by then, and they'll still not get perfection in um, their prayers, right? So the Yuga Dharma for Treta Yuga was made a little more easier. It was yagnas, and it's much simpler than sitting and meditating on the Lord. This is fire yagnas, and one good example of performing fire yagnas back in the Treta Yuga was Prithu Maharaj. So they used to offer a lot of medha, pure offerings to the yagna. The brahmanas would chant prayers perfectly, right? And so perfect that just by the prayers chanted, even if they offer animal into the fire sacrifice, the animal would get a new life instantly. That was how pure their chanting was. But as they moved from to Dwapara Yuga, now the average lifespan reduced from 10,000 years to 1,000 years. Okay, and the Yuga Dharma became a little more easier then. The Yuga Dharma changed from yagnas to deity worship. Deity worship is very elaborate back in Dwapara Yuga. You wake up the Lord in the morning, you offer him boga 4 times a day, you put him to sleep in the night, do all the festivities, celebrate with all the chapan bhog, right? These standards are followed in temples even today when we are praying to the Lord, the deities. But this was a standard followed by every householder back in Dwapara Yuga. Naturally, in Kali Yuga, our average age now is about 100 years or even lesser, right? And doing all these elaborate practices of Dwapara Yuga, where you offer deity worship, or Treta Yuga yagnas, we don't even have brahmanas who can recite those mantras with so much clarity and purity anymore, right? That knowledge is lost, and we know definitely cannot sit in meditation within this 100 years and achieve success. So the process Yuga Dharma here is now changed to what? Sankirtana. Okay, it's Sankirtana movement. The Yuga Dharma is Sankirtana. And what kind of Sankirtana? Congregational chanting. It's not single, sit alone and chant. Congregational chanting. Come together and chant. Okay, and this is the process that we follow in Kali Yuga. And where did this Sankirtana Yagna come from, originate from? There are 3 avatars of Krishna in Kali Yuga. Does anyone know who they are and which order they come in?
Yes, Mataji, if we see in the Bhagavatam, Lord Buddha,
Okay.
then Lord Sri Chaitanya, and the Kalki will be.
Yes. So thank you, Sumit Prabhu. So 2500 years ago, Lord Buddha appeared. And the second avatar in Kali Yuga is Lord Chaitanya, okay, who appeared 500 years ago. And Lord Chaitanya is personification of Krishna and Radha, the two together. Okay, and the final avatar in Kali Yuga will be Kalki Bhagwan. We already have completed 5,000 years of Kali Yuga, and Kali Yuga will ultimately last for 4,30,000 years. So at the end of that Kali Yuga and at the beginning of Satya Yuga, Kalki will come to destroy all the miscreants at that time. Okay, but we'll focus now on the second avatara, which is Lord Chaitanya. He is described as such: Krishna Varnam, Tvisha Krishnam, Sangopangastra Parsadham, Yagnai Sankirtana Prayer, Yajanti Hi Sumedasaha. In age of Kali, intelligent person perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead, who constantly sing the names of Krishna. Although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself. He is accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. So Lord Krishna is Krishna himself. Chaitanya is Krishna himself, and he propagated the Maha Mantra. He gave us this Maha Mantra and propagated it. He's from Bengal, and through Bengal and Puri, he reached out to everyone. He went around the city singing praises of the Lord. So he instigated the whole congregational chanting or Sankirtana movement. So it said that, in fact, when he was once walking through the Jharkhand forest, even the animals there, when he was performing Sankirtana, they used to stand and dance to the Sankirtana. Imagine tigers, deers together coming and dancing to the Sankirtana movement. So that was the intensity, the power of his Sankirtana movement. And that's where, even today in ISKCON, we continue this Sankirtana movement. In fact, if you go to the temple on Sunday, right after the 12:30 Srimad Bhagavatam class, we go around the area singing the Maha Mantra. So that is Sankirtana movement that is followed even today. Okay, so today, capturing what we discussed Arjuna asking for clarification. Should I do action or should I renounce? And Krishna is saying, do not renounce artificially, because that will neither give you peace nor perfection. So perfection is not coming from renunciation. All activities must be dovetailed to Krishna or to the Lord. Work done as a sacrifice to Vishnu will not cause bondage. And do not get attached to the results. Okay, offer everything to Krishna. Perform your duties, do your prescribed duties, like you're doing a yagna, as you're performing, like you're performing a sacrifice. Now, there are different sacrifices prescribed for different yugas that we went through earlier today. And the best yagna for Kali Yuga is Sankirtana. Okay, so this is a summary of a class. So before I end this session, there's a small pastime I want to talk about. This is about a king, a prince called Priyavrata. Okay, who is this Priyavrata? He is the son of Swayambhuva Manu. Now, Swayambhuva Manu is the son of Brahma. Okay, he's the son of Brahma. So Narada Muni is his uncle. Okay, so he had accepted this Prince Priyavrata. He had accepted Narada Muni as his spiritual master, and he was taking spiritual instructions from him. Now imagine Narada is instructing someone, right? Narada has instructed Dhruva Maharaj, he has instructed Prahlada, and all of them came out as exalted devotees of the Lord. And now this the same Narada Muni, he's preaching to Priyavrata. He's talking about spiritual topics. And Priyavrata became so engrossed in all these spiritual discussions that he did not want to do anything else other than renounce the material world and think of the Lord. But his father, Swayambhuva Manu, was getting a little concerned, because it so happened there was a situation building at that time that there was no suitable rulers to rule the kingdom after him, after the Swayambhuva Manu. Okay, so he definitely, because Priyavrata was the only eligible candidate to take over, he was definitely trying to convince Priyavrata to come back from the renounce order to householder life. Okay, so this was when there was a mountain called Mandala, I think, yeah, Ganda Madana, correct. So this Narada and Priyavrata are talking about spiritual topics here, and Swayambhuva Manu also comes there to convince his son to come back to material life, to householder life. But Priyavrata is not completely convinced, because he's been preached by the none other than Narada himself, and Narada's preaching is very impressive. It's not going to be easy to convince him to come back to householder life. But at this time, Brahma himself appeared there, and he didn't come alone. He came with many, many great sages like Maricha, Atreya, Vashishta. So all these great sages came with Brahma, and they came there only with one intent. They came to convince Priyavrata that he must accept householder life. Now you can imagine how serious this situation was, because Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe, is himself coming to convince Priyavrata. Now we should also know that Brahma didn't whimsically come to convince Priyavrata. He was coming there under the order of the Supreme Lord himself. Okay, so even the Lord wanted Priyavrata to take up householder activities and rule the kingdom. Now the Brahma came there, and he spoke about householder life, how even as a householder one can be engaged in devotional service, and how one can still control their senses. So after much talking, Priyavrata was finally convinced, and he offered obeisances to his teachers, his grandfather, all the rishis, and he accepted householder lifestyle. And from there, under the mentorship of his father, Swayambhuva Manu, he started taking responsibility. He was nominated as a Maharaja, and he started taking responsibility of protecting all the planets, the universes. So his spectrum is at that level. Okay, so he started taking care of the duties that is required to be done by a king. But it did not stop there, because he had accepted householder. He also married a queen, a lady called Barhishmati. Yeah, he married someone called Barhishmati. She was daughter of one of the Prajapatis called Vishwakarma. So, and from her he got 10 children, 10 sons and one daughter. Okay, so this way he engaged completely in householder life. Now, of the 10 children, 3 of them were so well trained in brahmacharya that they subsequently became Paramahamsas, the highest order of sannyasis. And further, from another wife, he had another 3 children. They became the next Manus. Okay, and even with his wives, it's not that he was so focused on spiritual life, and so he did not care about his wife. That's not his mood. He loved his wife. Okay, and his wife is also supportive of his spiritual endeavor as well as his material duties. She's supporting her every way possible. So while ruling like this, Priyavrata was in a situation where he was a little unhappy. Of course, there's no reason to be unhappy for such a situation, but this is a Leela of the Lord. Priyavrata was unsatisfied, because when the sun was going around the Sumeru or the Meru mountain, it so happens when the sun is on the north side, the south side becomes dark, right? And when the sun is on the south side, the north side becomes dark. He was a little dissatisfied with that situation. So what did he do? He went on the sun orbit on a very bright chariot. Okay, this chariot was so bright that any region, when the sun is on the north, he would be on the south orbit, and the south would be lit, completely lit. And it so happened the chariot that he was working on or riding on, it created 7 tracks around the Bhumandala, because he was constantly going around the Bhumandala. Sumeru is the center axis of Bhumandala and is going around the Bhumandala. And 7 tracts of land were formed. Okay, these islands are today called as Jambu Dvipa, Plaksha Dvipa, Salmali, Kusha, Kraunchana, Shaka, and Pushkara Dvipa. So 7 islands were found. And each of these islands were covered with some kind of liquid. For example, Jambu Dvipa was covered with salt water. Plaksha was covered with sugarcane juice. Salmadi would be covered with alcohol. Kusha would be covered with ghee, right? And Krauncha would be covered with milk. And Shaka would be covered with yogurt. And finally, Pushkara was covered with sweet water. So imagine 7 tracts of land. There's oceans of these valuable materials like salt, sugarcane, liquid between each land. The 7 sons he had from Bahishmati, they ruled each of these bhumandalas, the 7 bhumandalas. So we can understand his prowess. And of course, all this was possible because the Lord was very pleased with him because he was doing his duties so much perfectly. So he had that strength, potency to do all these activities because of the blessings of the Lord. And he nominated 7 of his sons to rule each of these 7 islands. So this way, Priyavrata, he performed his duties very nicely, right? His land that he was ruled is filled with all the nice variable resources. We pay 2,000 rupees for half-liter ghee these days. And his kingdom, the people had so much richness around them, they just had an ocean of ghee right there to pick up from. So imagine that, right? So after doing his duties so perfectly, so one fine day, of course, Priyavrata also had a daughter. He did not miss on his duties there as well. He chose the best of Brahmanas. Who is this? Shukracharya. He is the head priest of the heavenly planets. So he married his daughter to Shukracharya. So he found the best groom for his daughter and got her married. So this way, he did his duties very perfectly. He was an ideal king, ideal husband, ideal teacher, an ideal father as well. He completed all his responsibilities, right? And after doing all this, when no longer that emergency situation that Brahma came to him, that was not there anymore. So when all that situation was kind of sorted, he started again thinking of renunciation. So after at this point, he gave up his wife, his opulence, his children, and again gave up all his responsibilities and started thinking about the Lord again. Now, how is this possible that a person who's seen so much opulence is able to give that up one fine day? Because he's not attached to this kind of opulence or this material things around him. He's not attached to all this. He's attached to the duty that came to him from the Lord. The Lord had given him certain instructions. He had asked him to be a grahastha, and he's doing it perfectly. There's a good example of this in terms of gopis. It's said that when the gopis, when they went to meet Krishna, they didn't want Krishna to get a bad name. That, the gopis, they just leave their work and they run to Krishna to see him. They didn't want Krishna to get a bad name because they did not perform their duties properly. Right? So what they do to avoid Krishna from getting a bad name, they'll do their duties perfectly, such that nobody can point a single speck of problem with their work. Right? They do their perfect and their family is happy, and after they've done their duties, they can do whatever they want. So the duties that we perform should be such that your family should not be disturbed by the fact that you're working in Krishna consciousness. So you should do your duties such that it's not just you who is happy, your family should also be happy about your activities in Krishna consciousness. It's even better if your family and you are together in Krishna consciousness. You make Krishna the center of all your activities, whether it's family time or your work that you do or any other activities that you do. If Krishna can be the center, the focus of all your activity, it not only increases your affection for Krishna, your family will also come very nicely to Krishna consciousness in that way. So your work can bring not just you closer to Krishna, but also your family closer to Krishna. Just like with Priyavrata, he did his responsibilities so responsibly that his children became Manus. They were ruling the kingdom under Krishna consciousness, and he was marrying his daughter to a nice Vaishnava. So all these are very nice ways we can be in Krishna consciousness together with our family. So with that, I end the pastime for today. Are there any questions for anything that we discussed today?
I have one question, Mataji.
Okay, go one by one. Yes, Lata Mataji.
Is there any basic distinction between tapas and dhyana? Tapasya and dhyana.
Tapas might be almost the same, right? Tapas is sitting and meditating on the Lord. Dhyana is almost the same. I don't know if there's a real distinction between the two, but I can try to find out.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Does tapas mean austerity and dhyana mean meditation?
Yes, yes. Tapas means austerity and dhyana means meditation. You're right. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you,
Tapas,
Mataji. Hare Krishna.
yeah, Hare Krishna. Any other questions? Okay, no other questions. So a quick reminder. So to be eligible for the Gita Gyan level 1 certification, you should have attended 12 of these classes, 18 classes at least. And there will be a survey sent at the end of this call. That it will be a quiz and a survey as well. So I request, I'm seeing only about 40 people participating in quizzes every day. So please make sure you participate in the quiz and share your feedback on the call about this call, today's call as well. Okay, it helps us improve our standard of classes as well. So please make sure attend the class. And also about the Ekadashi class on Saturday, it will happen on Saturday at 10 a.m. The invite will be shared before the call. And also, if you're on the Gita Gyan app, there's a class called as Gita Master Class there, which is a 5-day crash course on Gita. So if you have friends and family who want to be part of that 5-day Gita Master Class, registration will be free for the next till Feb 12th, till the time Gita Gyan level 1 classes are going. After that, there'll be a nominal fee. So please encourage your family to register for those classes. It's a 5-day class. The next version of this class is what you're going through right now, which is Gita Gyan level 1. And that will be followed by Gita Gyan level 2. So that would be all about that I wanted to talk about today. So if there's no other questions, I'm ready to end the class. I'm giving it some more time. So anybody who's shy to talk out loud can decide to unmute your mic and ask your questions. Okay, no questions. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat pranam.
Hare Krishna
Dandavat
Mataji.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Dandavat pranam.
Dandavat pranam.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna Mataji, Dandavat pranam.
Dandavat pranam.
Dandavat pranam.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat pranam. Thank you, Mataji.
To all devotees
Hare
assembled here.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat pranam. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
I'm going to end the call for everyone. Hare Krishna. Thanks for joining. Please participate in the quiz that's sent right after the call today.